working on converting this Asmodai model into my chapter master for my custom chapter, the Hollowed Choir. I picked him, not necessarily for the rules, but just because he fits the vibe, and I missed a bunch of the B-roll at the beginning of me scraping, so jumping straight into converting this sword. I already glued some bone pieces onto the cross hilt, so here I am just cutting off the handle and cleaning it up. And then I'm taking another big bone piece, all of which are coming from the Crypt Horror box of the Flesheater Court, and gluing it onto the handle. It doesn't look that clean, but it doesn't matter because I'm about to cover it all up with some green stuff sculpting. And here I am with all my tools out to start sculpting, a lot of which is just to help me not have it stick to the table or stick to my fingers because I really struggle with that. But I just started by rolling out this strand. I was initially going to have like ropes wrapping around his hands and attaching to his arms, but it ended up being more of chains, one to kind of cover up some of those gaps, but also tie into that like penitent vibe that I'm going with this Hollowed Choir chapter. So one, more metal for that rust color and that rust and corroded surface to show their history of a little bit of touch of that nurgly corruption. Though they did survive and withstand that touch of chaos, but it kind of changed them. They see a lot of hypocrisy in the Imperium, so they didn't quite go back to the loyalist side, but definitely aren't chaos, somewhere in the middle, coming down with their hymns and their chants, these chains and these robes of penitence, and kind of just casting judgment on whoever they think needs to be judged. And all of that work was kind of for nothing because I thought it was way too messy. So I ended up tearing it all off and rolling up a narrower strand and really taking my time putting it on to show some of those lines of separation between the links already built in. So I didn't really have to carve it out with that tool. But once I got it back on, I went back with that silicone tool and furthered the separation, but here I really am trying to put in those individual links of each chain, and then I'm gonna let it dry once again, about 45-ish minutes, and then come back with a toothpick and knock in all those holes to really let the chains show. But as you can tell here in a moment at the end product, there's some really chunky chains. Still kind of learning my way with sculpting. But it's kind of that thing where when I'm building a model and I mess up and there's a mold line still there, or if I don't get a sculpt right, I always convince myself that once I paint it, I'm going to cover it up and make it more believable. I did not paint in this video. This is all about the kit bashing, so I guess we will test that theory once I paint this model. So with this chapter master and really all of my characters for this custom chapter, they are all former chaplains or current chaplains for at least their beliefs. And being the Hollowed Choir, it does have that choral or choir theme. So all of these chaplains are cantors or cantors of corrosion. And this chapter master, who at least for the moment I'm calling Kael Sephtar, is the hollowed voice, the leader of those cantors. So coming in to cleanse what they view as corruption with these choral hymns on their lips as they're slaying their enemies. I really wanted to have that choir feel, but also that imposing, scary feel. So that's why all of these bones are on the swords and on the models, and we'll see more in a moment once I do his chest piece. But instead of having that Dark Angels themed crozier, because I took all of the Dark Angels iconography off, I took a torch from the Penitent Engine kit and made that the top of his mace or top of his crozier, and I added some of those chains that I just did on the sword to that as well as taking one of those flails as well from the Penitent Engine kit to add on to those chains to make it one, more of a weapon, and two, add in a more identifiable sculpt of chains to maybe help sell this sculpting work that I'm doing. This being my second attempt at the chains, it felt a little bit more successful. One, I learned I needed to get that initial roll of green stuff a little bit more narrow instead of trying to push in each indentation on its own. I was a little bit more patient, so it was a little bit more malleable as well as hard to get both those holes and the individual indentations in. But then I moved on to this ribcage chest piece. I missed the original video. I really just put a blob of green stuff on there and then tried to put individual ribs in. I don't know if I was anatomically accurate. I didn't really pay attention to it that much. But I wanted this to be, one, that chaplain-esque ribcage, but also to be a lot larger because I see this as like a relic of the Hallowed Choir. They kind of hold all these bones of their either former members or of their enemies and adorn them to their armor. And I also wanted this to be, part of that choral choir vibe, as this is a vox piece, not just a ribcage. So that circular piece is like one of those weird mouthpieces from the Chaos Spawn box. And then once I finish sculpting this up, I'll glue a skull in there to be the kind of mouthpiece. Once it did dry, about an hour later, I just peeled it off of the chest. Actually, this might have been a day later now that I think about it, because it was pretty rigid. So I just peeled it off, and then I took both my nippers and X-Acto knife to really cut in those ridges of the rib cage so you could see the armor underneath and have that deep recess for when I do some shading, but also just to cut off the excess piece, especially that lower part, to sell that sternum instead of just a big blob. And then I glued it on, and as mentioned, I took a skull from the Citadel skull box and glued it on the front to be that mouthpiece. Also, I realize as I'm doing this voiceover, I'm saying a lot, but I'm just trying to go off the top of my head instead of scripting stuff out. But here it is, finished up, or mostly finished up, starting to glue on the smoke and his halo. This is a piece that was pretty important, but I missed the video apparently. So the emblem, if you saw one of my earlier videos on this, for this Hallowed Choir, is kind of like the Dark Angels emblem. It is a broken sword with, instead of a wing, it's like a skeleton of a wing. So I took one of the smaller wings of the Cryptflayer leader from the Flesh Terrors or Flesheater Court box and glued that onto the halo to serve as that skeletal wing. And then I started to make up the base. I did not have a plan. I just took some stone texture and some mud texture and threw it on. I just wanted this to be some detritus and rubble. And then I took both skulls from the Citadel skull kit as well as bones from the Dead Animal Bits box, which at this point actually I realized I did not have the Dead Animal Bits box. I think as I was starting to do this, I realized I needed that box and I bought it. So this is all just random pieces from different boxes that look like bones or look like skulls, as well as skulls from that Citadel skull box. And just kind of threw them on there at random. Since it's a little bit bigger base, I took advantage of some of those bigger skulls from the box. And then once it felt done, I let it dry. And then I forgot to do battle damage on this model, so I ended up doing it afterwards. I did not video me doing that, but I'm going to convert some inner circle champions as well as some Blade Guard veterans next, and those will have a pretty thorough coverage of how I'm doing the battle damage on each of these models. But yeah, cleaned off all that extra dirt and stone texture to not kind of drown out the model. But here it is, along with the chaplain that you saw me paint in my previous video, because as you can tell, he's pretty similar to this model, so I didn't cover the kit bashing. I did take one of those smaller wings as well from the Cryptflayer box. But here it is all finished up. Like I said, I didn't paint in this video. That will come at a later date. But thanks for watching.